For as long as the PS5 has been around, I've wondered why the heck hasn't anybody made something that would just, let the system sit flat without having to rely on a loose-fitting stand or cheap-looking plastic inserts? On my launch model, I eventually resorted to using double-sided adhesive strips to keep the stand in place. PS5 tends to be my go-to platform for modern gaming, but these systems are large, gravitationally unstable, annoying to move, and are generally just the most inconvenient physical objects that I own. Sony does get points for throwing aside the previous decade's philosophy of game consoles being nondescript boxes that you aren't supposed to think about, but you can still be creative while giving the console a stable, flat bottom. Well, back in early June, My Life in Gaming supporter Kawika linked me to this slick video by Devin Johnson called "I Fixed the PS5 and Now You Can Too," which made me exclaim, internally at least, "Yes, finally!" In short, Devin designed injection molded plates for every single PS5 model with or without disk drives that are flat on the top, flat on the bottom, and potentially even help the system run just the teensiest bit cooler. With the box plates being available for pre-order through his Devin PC storefront and it seeming like a product made just for me, I immediately ordered a set of gray box plates for the PS5 Pro with disk drive in spite of the $85 price tag, which, hey, I understand because it's probably a somewhat low volume product with expensive manufacturing setup costs. Well, 4 months later, the box plates were finally in my hands. But in the meantime, I have to admit that I became increasingly concerned about the distance that discs might need to travel through to the slot before being gripped by the drive. After all, PS5 disk drive slots are set further back than on most consoles, so without the backward curve, I was afraid that the boxy shape might inevitably result in a poor experience for physical media enthusiasts like myself. Well, when I opened the box plates, I could see that the disk drive slot is indeed pretty deep. And that's not just from the injection molded shell part, but it extends even deeper through the 3D printed inserts that allow the box plates to be affordably manufactured for the 6 potential PS5 console configurations. To be clear, I don't have an issue with the tabs that affix the box plates to the console being 3D printed. This was clearly stated in the promotional video, and I greatly appreciated them being pre-installed. But once I saw the reality of it, I became worried about my discs potentially rubbing against a rough 3D printed surface. What I did to assuage my fears was order some adhesive microfiber cloth, supposedly for squeegees. Cut it to length and adhere it to the side of the 3D printed portion of the slot that faces the underside of the discs. It took me a few tries to get it right. I've noticed that modern discs do tend to be more scratch resistant than the CDs and DVDs of eld, so in all honesty, I thought I was just being overly cautious. But check out what happened when I rubbed a 3D printed piece across the surface of this German PS4 copy of the defunct live service game Dead Alliance that I have for some reason. I was being a bit rough, of course, but I was surprised that I didn't have to try that hard to get some slight scratches. I was honestly expecting and hoping to have to go to more extreme lengths before that would happen. You shouldn't have any problems removing your PS5 plates and installing the box plates. You basically have to set the back end like hinges and swing the plate toward the front, pressing firmly along the front edge. I kept ending up with the front vent side corner popping up, but it turned out that I was not pressing firmly enough in the front middle of the plate to lock it in. So that's my bad for not taking that part of the video to heart. But here it is, the box plates as installed on my PS5 Pro plus disk drive. The color I chose is a shockingly great match for the 30th anniversary DualSense. Regardless of looks, I was anxious to see what the disc inserting experience was really like. And it's fine, I suppose. I don't think I have a problem with this. But as it turns out, what I really should have been more concerned with was the disc removal experience. If you only have an original model PS5, you might not know that the eject button on later systems is on the detachable drive itself, and a button on the plate makes contact with it. On the box plates, this button is part of the 3D printed stuff, which isn't ideal, but would be fine, I suppose, if it didn't require a surprisingly firm press. That might not be a deal breaker on its own, but my heart sank when I saw what happened next. See, Sony was careful to ensure that you can grab the center hole of your discs once ejected. But with the box plates, that is sadly not the case. There's really just no satisfactory way to remove the disc. I've had to just awkwardly drag it with my thumb on the edge and my finger on the top until I can access the hole. I guess folks who grab discs by the edges won't see the problem here, but that's kind of against my morals.
No.
So, I hate to say it, but I do think this is a deal breaker for me. Maybe the way to go would have been to take inspiration from the PS4. You know, slope the top plate up like this, but then slope the bottom plate back in a mirrored fashion so it accommodates the drive placement a bit better. I think being able to access that disc hole is just so important, but it's honestly something that I've taken for granted until now. If you happen to be all in on the digital PlayStation ecosystem or use discs only very sparingly, then I think the box plates could be a great product for you if you just want to change up your console's look. I do think it looks a bit unfinished without a logo of some kind, which could be resolved with the optional box plates logo, though if I were going to stick with these, I'd rather put some kind of Sony or PlayStation badge on it so that I can lie to myself and pretend it's official. At any rate, I've used the box plates on my PS5 Pro for several weeks now, but the whole disk drive situation has sort of just soured me on them, and I haven't even really been able to acclimate to the aesthetics as much as I thought I might. I've even had a stack of newly acquired PS5 games just piling up over here because I never shelve my games until I've installed them, but I just don't enjoy using the disk drive with box plates. Maybe the lesson here is that even for consoles that look dumb or even pretentious, even then, I think I just prefer to keep my consoles looking stock. The look of each system is just part of what they are. So I've decided to go back to the original Sony plates, and from here on, I'm just going to accept that the design of the PS5 is what it is.